morning. Hope you are doing well. I am quite well myself. So, today we're going to talk about a little experiment that I ran recently. And this was an experiment which was all about me trying to get as many views on social media as possible, hoping that that would have some sort of impact on my sales. And I'm going to tell you right now what I found was surprising. First of all, when was the last time you've gotten 500 million views on your content? For me, it's been about a year. But before that, never. I'd never gotten that much attention on something I was posting online. And really, it was a result of me reverse engineering the mechanism of getting attention online. Now, this is something I have been studying, I guess as I have to say, as my career for the past 15 years, but not always intentionally, sometimes just learning through experience. When I first started on social media, it was really in the blogging space. And that's when you could actually become well known just for having a strong, consistent voice on your own personal blog, which I would argue is kind of dead in this era. And eventually I moved into social media, and I am from the era where you had to have an EDU email address to get a Facebook account for the first time. I am from the era of social where it truly was social media first, and we were using it to connect with friends and then friends of friends. Now, social media is more like interest media, where people are finding things they're interested in regardless of whether it's coming from their friends or not. And in fact, we don't actually really see our friends on social media anymore, which is a totally different thing. And that's why I think social media in general feels so unfulfilling and chaotic. It was initially a way to find out which one of our friends from high school got engaged, and now it's just a way to serve you advertisements for Pizza Hut. So that's kind of the context for social in this, in where I am in terms of understanding it as a creator. When I was designing this experiment, I thought, what is the way that I'm going to utilize what already works online to essentially bring attention to my business, my following, my projects with the least amount of effort? I didn't want to spend a lot of money. I didn't want to spend a lot of time. And so I thought, all right, well, the easiest way to do this would be to take advantage of the fact that there's so much viral content that already exists online, and to utilize that content as a way of essentially hijacking the stream of attention and eyeballs that are already occurring on the internet. I had some experience with this before because when I first started my Instagram account in 2014, I was doing a lot of my own quotes, and I would use things that were popular at that time. Like, at that time, it would be like pictures of Steve Jobs in a black turtleneck, and it would be like, your grind site is your mindset type shit. Like, I didn't put those, that would be super corny even then. But the idea of using well-known business celebrities as pieces of content was something I was familiar with, and I've done that before. Same thing with like picture stills from movies and memes, things that were universally popular, using those on my page as like an entrepreneur account in order to draw attention and draw traffic. That has always worked. It seems like it was still working when I want to basically start this new experiment. And for me, this was kind of like rebooting my social again, because I had been pretty much inconsistently posting from 2020 to 2023, 2024. And around 2024, I thought to myself, okay, I want to figure out what I can do to jumpstart the attention and the eyeballs I'm getting to these accounts again, and I'll use memes. So I started to go through the top accounts of channels in my space that were related to things that I generally found interesting around my brand. So that would be anything that's health, wealth, mindset, well-being. And then within those categories, I would dig into some specific niches. So like for me, for instance, a big component of I wouldn't even say always my personal brand online, but certainly my own interest, and something I would talk more about if I was given the opportunity, would be jiu-jitsu and MMA. And that's because I've been training for over a decade now, and then even before that, a martial artist. And so thinking about wanting to put more content out like that, I was excited, and I actually did put out a good amount of MMA content. I also put out a good amount of content around psychedelics or quantum reality or different types of philosophy that I found particularly interesting. I also put out a lot of stuff from well-known influencers who I had some sort of viewpoint that I aligned with or that I wanted to comment or critique on. So I was putting out a lot of content. I started out putting out maybe one or two meme posts of this style. There were videos or pictures on both my Facebook public account and my Instagram account starting in, it would have been September, no, it would have been November of 2024, just to start to see what would happen if I really ramped this type of content up. And I was surprised that it immediately got great results. Not really surprised, but interested, because compared to my own content, if I put up my own content of my face, of my words, 10 years ago, that would have gotten good feedback because people would read what I'm saying and have some sort of commentary, usually people that I knew or friends of friends. Now, because social media has become interest media, for the most part, a lot of what I put out for my own personal brand wasn't getting any traction, any boost in the brand, or boost in the profile. People weren't even seeing that content, so they couldn't even comment on it because they didn't see it. Whereas the viral stuff, the black box algo immediately picked it up. It started getting eyeballs right away, and I would have videos that would pop off and get 10, 20, 100,000 views in the first couple hours. Then maybe it was like 1 million views after a couple of days. Then maybe I had some videos that would get like 5 and 10 million views, 20 million views. And these were stupid videos. These were, again, like crazy MMA knockouts or jiu-jitsu submissions. They were breathtaking nature things, wildlife, different types of psychedelic concepts, far out stuff that I was interested in. And what I would do is I would put a Twitter or an X style caption above the video as if I was sharing the video on one of those platforms. So it had my face with some commentary from me attached on the video. So there was some of my IP, I could say, or my perspective on what I was sharing, but it was mostly sharing clips from other people. And if you want to look at this stuff, you can go to my Instagram profile and you can scroll down. I archived a lot of these posts. Maybe I'll archive some, but you can go down to my posts from anywhere from November 2024 to summer of 2025, the middle of that year, June or so. And you can see I was experimenting with this stuff, and you'll probably see a lot that still have many, many, many hundreds of thousands or millions of views. I'll also put a recap post of this with some screenshots of my analytics. I'll put this in the video as well if I can remember to put it in the description box. So you can look at that stuff to understand more of the context of what I was posting. But my view of this was, if I get enough views on my content, then because I'm getting a mass amount of people, some people are going to filter through my offers. And over the course of about 6 months, from November to June, we got 500 million views on these videos. I mean, crazy, just insane numbers. And that was 500 million on Facebook alone. It was probably another 100 or 200 million on Instagram, for sure. We had some videos that were doing, again, 20 million views. And what I noticed from that was so interesting. First is the types of people that it filled my audiences with, especially on Facebook. My Facebook page, in the course of 6 months, grew about 147,000 people. It had about 21,000 people. I hadn't maintained it in years. This is an super old account from my Rich 20 days, and I hadn't done anything with it. It had 20,000 people on there. I remember getting that verification from Facebook when Facebook was still Facebook, and when verifications with the little blue check mark had to be given out to very select people, which made me feel so motherfucking special. And now you buy it for $15, but who gives a fuck? That account grew so quickly in the period of 6 months, and it was filled with MAGA. I hate to say it, it was filled with MAGA. It's just the truth. How do I know? Because I started to post some political stuff on that page, and it was filled with the most racist, most Trump bootlicking people you could possibly imagine. I don't even want this video to go into the direction of talking about that whole thing, because honestly, it pissed me off, because essentially it all the new people who came to that page, the majority of them were coming from, I believe, the MMA memes. And it makes me think and confirm the connection in my head between the UFC and MAGA. I believe that the UFC essentially got red pilled many years back at this point, and it's now there's now like a political alignment between that particular organization and the current admin, which I mean they're doing a fight at the White House, so of course there's a political alignment. But it's just crazy because it's attracted so many of those types of people as fans now, and that wasn't the fan base when I was the most interested in it. Between like I would say 2014 and 2020, I was very much into UFC, and over the past 5 years, hasn't been as interesting to me. And I think now I'm pinpointing it. It's the fan base has changed. So that account grew like crazy, and across both IG and Facebook, after 1 billion views, how much do you think Meta paid me as a partner? Like think about it like this. YouTube pays their creator partners a certain amount of dollars per 1,000 views essentially. And we can argue about whether it's a lot of money or a little. I know there are some people who still live off of YouTube revenue. I know that it's not as much as it used to be. I know the TikTok's programs aren't as good as they used to be. So we can talk about that. But I will just tell you this. Of the 500 million views I got on the Facebook platform alone, their partner program compensated me $2.97. 500 million, which is really crazy if you think about it, because for 500 million views, it was thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of hours of content watched, millions of hours of content watched. And so even from that perspective of my memes that I posted on my account harvested millions of hours of other people's attention. I'm sure there were some bots in there that it wasn't a real person watching it, but like in theory, it harvested millions of hours of people's attention, and it's only worth $2.97 to Meta as a platform, which is crazy. So it's crazy that the platform values your attention at so little, and it's crazy that they value my contribution to collecting your attention so little. It's just insane all around that you would get paid $2.97 for generating 500 million views. And now I'm not sure if that's the same with every account, everybody. Maybe it's the quality of the buyers that were coming through from my views, which I can certainly attest to on my own end. But that was a hard realization. If I'd gotten, let's just put it to you this way, even with YouTube reducing their rates, if I'd gotten 500 million views on YouTube, even if it was shorts, that would have been several $100,000, if not $1 million, for sure. So that out of the way. Now, of those 500 million views and of those 147,000 new followers on Facebook and probably 30,000, 20,000 new followers on Instagram, how many people converted to any one of my free offers? And here, let me preface this by saying I did try to stick within health, wealth, well-being, and tangential topics. And I also did talk about our books because, I run New Wave Press, which is a publishing company. So I talked about our business. I sprinkled in information about that. Of the 500 million views and eyeballs that we got from that experiment, how many people opted into our free stuff to get more information? Zero. And of course, if there's 0 people, wait, let me back it up. It was fewer than 10. It was fewer than 10 people, because that's the same as 0. Statistically anyway. I mean, when you're coming from 500 million to fewer than 10 people opting in, that's 0. And of that essentially 0 number of conversions to our free information application to learn more, 0 people booked a call or sold. So, I mean, it was just an insanely poor conversion. And it makes me think a few things. One, it makes me think that the most important thing that you can remember going into any type of campaign is it's not about volume, it's about fit. And I'll tell you more about another campaign later that I also took lessons about this whole concept from. We'll just keep on the social media one for now. Fit is so important. If you are marketing, you want to find the best types of people for your offer, regardless of how big that pool is. Obviously, the bigger the pool, the better. But I would say sometimes it's, especially in the beginning, it's better to work with a smaller pool of people and really find out what makes those people convert than have this huge audience that has no specific interest, some amorphous public sector of the public. To expect them to be interested in anything that you have to offer, if it's a detailed and specific offer for one type of person, you're much more likely to do better with a group of 100 people who you're speaking to and a few of them might be interested than going to a group of 500 million and saying, there's got to be a lot of people in here. This is such a big slice of the population, such a big slice of, potential eyeballs. It sounds good, but it doesn't work like that really. So you have to think about it from that perspective of fit over volume. And sometimes this can be a little bit confusing because we're trained to make things go viral in terms of what we qualify as good content. We're trained to also up our ad spend when we're spending. And I would just encourage you to go deeper rather than wide. Even though, and that brings me to my next point, because you have to consider customer acquisition cost. Now you might say, well, Daniel, you did all that stuff organically, so it was free. You didn't pay anything. You weren't paying to run ads, but it was a fair amount of work. I mean, yes, I could have employed a whole team to do it, but unfortunately, and this, people will call me out and say this is not true and you're being controlling, but I kind of know what does well on my specific IG account. I tested a few different team members essentially to help me to do this. And for this experiment, it was best if, at least if I wasn't pulling all the content, I was reviewing all of it before it went out. And that just takes time. The method for getting the viral content was I had several different accounts that shared meme content booked, and I would go and look through their posts and find the unicorns. So whatever content the best platforms were posting, I would go and find their best content. So if most of their content was getting 300,000 views, but one had 5 million, I was sniping that one. And so I would look for all the unicorns amongst all the popular channels. So that's how I would know within a certain degree of certainty, within a relative degree of certainty, that this content would perform because it's already been tested other places. And so that took time to actually run that whole system, to create that process, to generate clips that did go viral. And I was correct about their virality, but I wasn't correct about their conversion, their potential for conversion. And that time that I spent to create the system and to run it for 6 months, well, that was an opportunity cost because it took time to develop the strategy, to run it, to support it on the back end, and then to fuck with it basically, honestly. And that cost me several hours per week. And you have to look at your own time and say, okay, well, what do I charge per hour? Even if I was being generous and saying, all right, I charge $1,000 an hour, which some people might think that's a lot, for some people that's a little. $1,000 per hour, and let's say I was spending at least 10 hours a week looking at it. 10 hours a week of creating, batching, thinking, distributing, and seeing what the viral traffic would build or what it would result in. 10 hours a week, $10,000 a week, $40,000 a month, over 6 months, $250,000. Was it worth $250,000 of my time? You can jack with the hours and say that I should be charged more or less, but was it worth that much time? So customer acquisition cost is more than just what you spend on an ad platform. It's also what you pay the team members who support the process of bringing that customer in. What you pay after the customer is officially a part of is officially a customer, and what you need to pay to support them. It's not directly acquisition, but it goes into cost of goods, and that's not always considered on the front side of acquiring a customer. And for me, even though I didn't have any of that stuff really, just to get people through the door, I was spending time to try to create this marketing system, and that cost us money. So there were no customers generated, but the acquisition cost or the ad spend I was spending was my time, and that could have been directed somewhere else. And so I'm not saying it was a bad attempt, but I'm saying that because the content wasn't well aligned to the type of person that I wanted to work with, whether it was an author who's a high level, high ticket client, or even a reader of our books who would just be someone who likes to read. And that wasn't what we were getting in our commentary, trust me. Because we didn't have good fit of our avatar for either one of those, then we weren't acquiring customers. So it was just spending money to run a platform that wasn't actually creating value for our company or really for the people that it was entertaining. So that was a realization too. Customer acquisition cost is part of the consideration of all campaigns. And then I would say that we didn't even get to this stage, but customer lifetime value. And I guess the reason why it's relevant even in this conversation is because, again, I always go back to Dan Kennedy. We don't make sales to get, we don't get customers to make sales. We make sales to get customers. And again, I was, I just think that theory or that perspective by Kennedy is also subtly and without saying it directly, it promotes the idea of quality over quantity. Because you can sell as much as you want, and all of your money is going to be made on the second and third and fourth purchase. If anything, just because at that point, if your numbers are correct, you should have well exceeded how much it costs to market to that person in terms of the first sale. I mean, you should be making money on the first transaction. It's not always the case when it comes to some e-commerce brands or some digital stuff, but in general, you should be making money after the first transaction. And so really, it's if the customer continues to buy from you, not even just like if it's a subscription, but like if you could upsell them to other things, you can bring them to events and programs, you can, continue to keep them involved in your world. That's where the real money is. That's where the real value in the customer is. And I think even from the viral approach of saying how many eyeballs can we get, it's still definitely focused on quantity, which sometimes can be a tool, but quantity should only be turned up and dialed up when quality is dialed in. And I think that was the mistake there. And, again, 6 months, it wasn't the end of the world. It was a good experiment on viral traffic, but viral traffic doesn't sell. Viral traffic is not going to make you money. It's not going to change the trajectory of your product unless it's the right type of viral traffic. So if you go on Shark Tank and then everyone watches your Shark Tank episode and you go viral because they're interested in your product, that's one thing. Those moments are more rare. To engineer a truly viral moment about a product is pretty rare. It's a lot easier to generate a viral moment about something that is just sensational, which we see all the time now. So those are my lessons from 500 million views. Those are my big takeaways. I guess, I have more, but I'll share them in another video because I can't keep talking about every single experiment I've ever run and every single idea I've ever had in one video. Look, if you're enjoying this, like and subscribe. This is the reason why I'm making this channel, just because I want to be able to share the raw truth about my journey, the things I've learned. I'm always going to share my successes because those are fun, but I think it's more important to share the losses, right? Or even just the learnings. They're not always losses. Even the story I just told, I don't really consider it a loss. It's just like, oh, that's a test that didn't work. And if you speak to most entrepreneurs, their stories are riddled with, oh, that didn't work. Oh, that didn't work. Oh, that messed me up again. And so I think it's totally fine. Tune in, and in case I don't see you, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. That was kind of a weak one. How about this? Better.